Welcome to In the Calm. I'm your host, Georgiana Alexander. Welcome back to In the Calm. Hey, you guys, I'm Georgiana Alexander. I am super excited to get into today's episode. We're going to dive into another thing that you guys have requested so many times in so many different ways about how to get in touch with your intuition, how to feel safe developing your intuition, and how to create protected space. Something I get asked about really a lot, especially from moms, is how to support your kids with their intuitive journey, with developing and feeling safe and being very sensitive and the intuitive things that your kids are picking up on. So, with this episode, I wanted to kind of put these together. And the reason being is because ultimately, when we're talking about getting connected to our intuition, developing our intuition, hey, there's a lot of different tools and step by steps that we could go through on things to do to develop your intuition. And we're going to touch in on some of those. But in my opinion, in getting to point B, is it really comes down to developing your intuition is about getting safe within yourself, feeling safe to be yourself, feeling safe and protected in your environment, and learning those tools to exist in the world as who you are, even if you're surrounded by people, places, environments, things that tell you, whether that's spoken or just by the existence of the way the structures exist, that who and how you are is not safe, not correct, not right. We're in the middle of a huge paradigm shift, which I know you all feel, my sensitive, beautiful babes out there. With that sensitivity, with the density of the world getting faster and lighter and moving so quickly in the veils, getting thinner and thinner between the dimensions and between all the different worlds, we're picking up on so much more. So many people are awakening to their true nature, to their intuitive gifts, to understandings about themselves that really maybe they've always known and felt and sensed, but not felt safe or really understood or had an environment to say, oh, that's intuition. And so I'm going to share a little bit about the way I grew up, which I know if you've heard any of my other stories, you know was probably not the norm for most people, but maybe there's some parts of that that you can associate to or identify with or see yourself mirrored in. And so I'm going to share that. And then also we're going to get into how to set up safe space so that not only you can feel safe to develop your intuition, but also parents out there, you can feel really empowered to support that journey for your kids. So, getting into my story a little bit, and for everybody new just joining in, a little like quick nugget is I grew up as since birth an intuitive, a seer, a healer, a futurist, a channel, and being trained, moving through all the dimensions, and now as a dimensional shaman, as well as living life fully in the 3D. So having that experience of really fully embodying, embracing both sides of that spectrum, and really what that journey taught me now, especially now as we have so much language around this, is that the full spectrum of experience is the norm, right? That is our experience as humans. But we've been taught to understand that the intuitive side is only for the few gifted, or the 3D side is really the norm. And that's the only part, the physical, tangible, the way that it's always been done is the way that it exists. And neither of those extremes are true. The truth is, we live in limitless potentials and possibilities of combinations of both of those, depending on who we are, what our gifts are, and the way that our soul uniquely wants to express itself in the world, in our human existence. So, going back to the way that I started on my intuitive journey, Basically, I was born into this experience. I was actually born 2 months early and was born on my grandmother's birthday, 2 months early, weighed just at about 3 pounds, just a little bit under or thereabouts. And I had a heart murmur, a little hole in my heart. And so, from an early age, being in the NICU for several months in the hospital, I have memories and awareness of even that experience. And so, I think from there, it's my awareness is the same awareness that I've had now. And that only heightened as I got older, like within a couple of years, I could sense, adults' emotions and had awareness of deep, deep emotional complexity around me and in different scenarios, as well as I was seeing angels and people's passed on relatives. And I was seeing shadow places in people's bodies if they were sick and just had a knowing if something was wrong with them or sick or something was going to happen to them. I had a strong awareness of that, as well as I would, by the time I was about 4 or 5, I was having dimensional visions, like seeing aliens and other dimensionals, as well as getting remote viewing visions and visions of people's stories. So, remote viewing into another room, as well as I was seeing things like, say, if an adult was telling a story and was saying one thing, describing a story, I got a really strong emotional sense and knowing of, wait, that feels off. And I would get the vision played to me. It was almost like a movie playing inside of my head. So not only could I see with my eyes open, but also I get sensory of like a movie playing inside my mind where it was showing me the actual story of what really happened. That was really interesting to be around a lot of adults. I grew up in an entrepreneurial home. And so it's a really interesting experience to see where people are misrepresenting the truth, we'll say. So also I was having, invisible friends and like really connected to the earth and nature around me and like every kind of plant and animal you could imagine. And I also, as I said, I had imaginary friends, but we had place settings for some of those friends at our dinner table, or I would have really long conversations with imaginary friends or like a big brother on the telephone, but they were actually all ghosts or pass on people or different beings. And so that was kind of the norm. And then that really got so much stronger for me. And we can go deeper into these stories. You guys reach out and let me know what you want to hear more about, and I'm happy to share. But for today, I'll focus on answering the questions of so many of you guys about, your kids and your inner child with intuitive development. So I'll make my stories quick. But so that got stronger and more awakened. It was something that was so deeply integrated into who I was. It's like breathing. It's like a fabric of my being where even though for a long time in my life I tried to compartmentalize that part of myself and that existence as something that was just like it was almost so natural and normal, but then also I knew it was not normal and it wasn't the experience that everyone else around me was having. And so I just sort of had this very rich, very colorful, textured experience that I was living that was my own world. And then I had, my 3D world with friends or family or later work or later relationships, things like that. So as I went through life, that deepened, that developed like those gifts and that passion for the unseen world, for my intuitive knowings, like it only developed stronger. And that was also because I was being trained by dimensional shamans, by mentors, by my ancestors in all of the different practices and learnings that my soul had needed to know in this life, but also remembering and reminding my soul and really connecting back into all of the other origin remembrance that I'd had in all my other lives. What that means is that I always had a connection and understanding and remembrance of almost all of my lives and now completely all of my life. So that just got stronger as I get older. I don't remember that like since birth, but then my brain was still developing in human. There was a lot of sense, right? That everything intuitive wise I had connection to. But, as my understanding and capacity for understanding evolved as I grew, so did my understanding of all of my other dimensional lives, all of my other existences in human form. That, just side note, because time and space is not linear, those are all existing actually at the same time. And so I was having connectedness to all of these other quantum realities and existences at the same time. And understanding that this way of being is something that is very innately integrated with my soul. It's something that I have always been, and for the good and the bad of it, right? It's not an easy path. I wouldn't say that I chose this path of not intuition, because I feel like all of us are intuitive. That's a birthright. The way that we interpret the world, being deeply connected to intuition, sensing the world of emotion, sensing so much of the unseen, knowing things as they come into our field, that's our birthright. What I'm speaking of is more of the shamanic side, which gets kind of intense at times. I'm not going to go far down that rabbit hole today. If we can talk about that in another podcast episode. But that's the part that I'm saying. I wouldn't necessarily like recommend that for everybody. Like, it's definitely a unique soul path that I feel like you're called to and is a part of what is sort of meant for you or not. But learning to step into your intuitive gifts, that's our birthright here as humans and this experience. And then I feel like each and every one of us can reconnect to, because essentially we do have that access. But in incarnation in this world, we want to fit in, and everything in this world up until recently, for the most part, is like screaming loudly that that's not real, that doesn't exist. Even though when we step away from that conditioning and we step away and sort of drop that veil of static and of reality, like when we remove that movie scene, if you will, the truth is it's always been in existence. There's always been people since the beginning of time tapped into these gifts and these skill sets, and really understanding the divine human birthright of this experience of being intuitive. And again, going back to, I personally believe that that's us really accepting our true selves, our authentic selves, and higher self, if you will, like our purpose in life and our calling in the way that we show up and in the way that we express ourselves. And so, as you're wanting to dive deeper into a relationship with your intuitive gifts and feeling safe with that, a couple of things that I'll talk about is like, first of all, if you're thinking about a relationship with anything and anyone, like as it's new, if it's brand new and something you've never done before, that can take a little bit of time. Not everyone is built to just dive in and like rip things open and like, dive off a cliff and just get right into it. Some people you are. And if you are, chances are you're not questioning how to do that. You're already in process before you can even think about the question. But if you are questioning and you're tiptoeing around this experience and wanting to get deeper with that, I would really advise you to think about it as getting into a new relationship or trying something new that you're really nervous about, but really excited about, where you explore the pieces of it. You learn about the things that feel particularly calling to you, that light you up, that you feel safe and excited by, because that's going to help be the breadcrumbs that guide you to what's meant for you. Changing that narrative to parents wanting to help support your kids on their intuitive journey, it's really the same conversation, right? And actually, it's a great lens to look at this for everyone, whether you're a parent, whether you're not a parent, of how would you nurture a child in any new development? Like if it were a really healthy, beautiful parent-child relationship, maybe not some of the experiences that we have grown up in, but really if you're looking at it through the lens of a beautiful, healthy dynamic between a parent and a child, you would feel excited for the things that they're looking at the lens of the world through and wanting to connect to. You would probably research those things and start to draw in experiences or resources around that topic that you feel would be appropriate for a starting point, depending on their age, depending on where they are with their time commitment or their abilities to sort of adapt to new experiences. You would look at all of that through that lens and introduce that material and that concept in a really healthy, beautiful, nurturing, and boundaried way, right? And so I think whether you're a parent child doing this for your child or whether you're just an individual looking to do this for yourself, go about it through the lens of nurturing that inner child within yourself. How would you want to have been taught these concepts or get excited, have someone get excited with you about the things that you're wanting to do? What kind of support would make you feel really, really good? And that's what you're needing, as well as for parents, that's what your kids are going to be really connected to. Because don't forget, parents, your kids drew you in for a reason. And whatever way that you show up for them, you are showing up in the way that is what your soul's contracted to work through in this experience together. And so there's no wrong or right way of doing this. And the fact that you're even asking the question is so beautiful and so telling of how incredible you are, first of all. And second of all, there's just no wrong way to go about this. I can't emphasize that enough. And that goes for individual, that goes for the parents, that goes for kids. There's some tips and tools that I would share in terms of safety. And so getting into regulation and getting into this conversation around safety, it's really important for all of us to create environments that we feel safe to explore in, safe to trial and error, safe to just be ourselves and have a little room to experience that in. And so maybe taking some time to just brainstorm what kind of environment would feel really good for you with that. What kind of environment would support that for you? What does safety look like and mean to you? And I think when you can identify that, you can really support yourself in this journey or in the journey of your child's development and supporting your nervous system regulation, because as you open up to a whole new experience of the world that you live in. It's like walking into a house that has four walls and suddenly the roof getting ripped off. And you're trying to adapt to the weather, to animals coming in, and having that be a new norm where you might not feel entirely safe. Like some people might feel like, cool, this is an amazing experience, right? But if you're not regulated to that and naturally inclined to just rip the roof off, dive right in, then your nervous system might need a little bit more reassurance that existing with not having a roof over your head can still feel good and safe and healthy and whole. And that's essentially what we're talking about, is like taking the walls of the house down, right? We're breaking down the confines of the conditioning of really our realities, of our family dynamics, of our cultural religious dynamics. That can feel really scary. And it's normal as you begin to test these new ideas out and these new experiences and belief systems out to want to run back inside and put up all the walls and roof of the house. So it takes time to feel safe in your journey of getting to explore outside of those walls and outside of that roof, if that makes sense with the analogy that we're dancing around with. So, taking time to understand your nervous system regulation is really an important part of intuitive development, I think, because it gives you safety to feel like you're okay and yourself to open to new experiences. And the other thing that I will share is creating sacred space has been a huge part of my journey. I had to learn in some difficult circumstances just how important that is, because just like in the scene world where there's assholes or situations that really don't feel safe and aren't safe, for all intents and purposes. In the unseen world, there's that same possibility of experiences. So it's really important to set your sacred space and identify and set intention for what it is you're wanting to have come into your experience. what it is you're wanting to open to, not just say, I'm open to receiving. Well, what is it that you're open to receiving? Because there could be a lot of things that start to land in your field and in your experience that maybe you don't want. So it is really important to name what it is that you are wanting to dance with, to set those intentions and create an environment again that you can feel really safe in. I am going to post up a separate podcast episode going through a sacred space meditation so that that can be referenced. I will circle back when it's up and link that in these show notes. But basically, you want to go in and create a sacred space, and that can be done in a number of different ways. A lot of people like to use things like sage and Santo Paulo, or love to do different meditations or different rituals, like whatever feels really good and juicy to you for creating a really sacred space. And what I mean by that is a place where you feel safe to go in and connect within yourself, and also invite in your ancestors or angels or your spirit guide or spirit animals or new experiences of channeling or hearing from whatever source it is that you're wanting to connect into. It is very important to name and set intention what it is that you're wanting to experience. Otherwise, who knows what you're going to get on the other end of that telephone call. So, a lot of times I get asked the question of how to feel safe with practicing your intuition. And again, that's why we're talking about kind of carving out that sacred space where you get to go into a place of just being really aware of your experiences and enjoying those experiences. Maybe you don't feel anything, maybe you don't hear anything or see anything right away. And that's okay. That's going to be normal because you haven't developed that awareness to subtle information yet. You have to get comfortable and practiced in trusting yourself, trusting your sensory, just like with your eyes. You trust that you can see a person walking in front of you. But sometimes if you glimpse something that you're like, oh, I thought that was somebody in front of me. Well, you might be getting a sensory experience of something crossing your path in another dimension, because all of our dimensions are overlapping as well. And so we're having all of these experiences at once, but the way that most people are brought up to experience the world is to kind of discredit anything that's not physical, tangible in front of us, right? And so there's a sense of developing that safety and that practice and awareness to more subtle nuances around you, to the subtleties of, if you're practicing to become a sommelier, a wine expert, then you are practicing your sensory of your smell and your taste, understanding the different layers and textures of the different fruits or different ingredients used, the way it's processed, where the regions are that the different elements are coming from, and you are developing that awareness and developing that practice. And so the same is true with your intuition. And you can slowly ease into that again. And I think that there's an element of safety in that, that when you kind of have a sense of like, oh, here's my game plan, this is what I do, it takes that unknown out of your mind of thinking, oh, I don't know what to expect here. I feel scared and in danger. I don't feel like I feel safe in the unseen and in the unknown. Well, I think that you can take that off the table for yourself and for your kids by kind of beginning to slowly cultivate awareness of what experiences happen in the unknown, right? You might see colors. You might pick up on emotions or textures. You might hear things. And again, if you're naming that in that intention in your sacred space of who's coming into space, and you're only giving permission for your spirit guides, for maybe a favorite ancestor, somebody with a high vibration, somebody that's there to help support your journey. Because just because people die doesn't mean they're all of a sudden saints, or that asshole relative isn't going to suddenly become, a saint or someone that's really supportive on your journey. So that's again why it's important to name who you're inviting into your space and understanding the intention of why you're inviting them into your space. But all of the beings that you name that are around you, your spirit guides, your angels, connecting in with God, the universe, however you want to language that, that is all there for your support, for your well being, for your growth. You have the calling that you feel pulled and directed to want to explore certain areas of your instincts and intuition. You're wanting to explore your deeper nature. And so the whole universe is in support of that. There's, of course, challenges. There's beings both in physical form and non-physical form that might want to block you or harm you and take you off track with that. But that's a whole other conversation. And in most cases, and even in those cases of challenge, it's still in support of you. And so you can check that off your list that 9 times out of 10, you're going to be engaging with beings that are there for your highest good and support. Maybe not even beings, maybe it really begins with the conversation of getting to know yourself and connecting in with yourself. So, for parents, let me direct this a little bit to parents as well. How can you help your kids feel really safe? I think setting up rituals or evening practices or daytime practices where your kids can pause from the stimulation of what's around them and create that sacred space. So, if it's in the morning, creating a healthy hygiene practice, like, hey, we brush our teeth, we tie our shoes, and we set an intention of having a protective shield around us where we can feel safe and clear our energy throughout the day. Right. So little things like that, like, okay, let's make this a fun game of making sure we connected to other people's thoughts and opinions and energies? Yes, if we are, great, let's clear that, right? It's the same as taking a shower or brushing our teeth. Having healthy, energetic hygiene is really important as you get to develop your intuition and support that, because it can feel really overwhelming if you're taking in and absorbing everyone else around you's emotions, thoughts, their ancestors' thoughts, their bosses' thoughts and opinion, whatever is around them, that you're picking up on all that information. That's not necessarily meant for you. It's just the same way as someone, in an environment might have a really heavy or strong fragrance perfume, and then you walk through it. Well, that's not your perfume and it's not meant to be your perfume. It's just you happen to be walking through it and you're having an experience of it as well. So it's important to, again, clear your energy, set your space and your dimension so you can help your kids understand that practice by fun little games like creating the sacred space bubble, which I'm going to share in that meditation that's coming as well to the podcast. So I'll link that in the show notes as well for you. Little things like that are during the day, teaching your kids how to just take pause and come back to their breath, because the breath is actually a really beautiful energetic cleansing space. It's like cleansing your palate if you're taste testing a bunch of things with like water, or how smelling coffee beans resets the nose, right? So you want to cleanse your palate of all of the information around you. And not only is that great for developing intuition, but it's also, again, great for resetting your nervous system. So all the things that you can think of that are really healthy to regulate your nervous system and help you feel safe in your environment and around, in your day and your kids' day, is the same things that are going to be really supportive for you as you open to your intuition. For nighttime routines, I think, again, it's really beautiful to help your kids like set safe space to call in protectors. So what I mean by that is, again, creating the bubble, clearing out the day, like giving permission for everything that's not theirs to be cleared out of their room. Kind of like, you wouldn't want to have your child sleeping with a room with a TV in it, because all that energy, all of that noise, that light, all that creates an environment that's really difficult to sleep and settle your system in. And so they're not getting optimal sleep. And as well as adults, you're not getting optimal sleep if you have, say, a TV going at night. But so when you turn that off and you block the excess light and you calm the energy in the room and maybe spritz a really good smelling, like essential oil, something really natural, and set the tone of the environment, like make it intentional, the kind of space that you're going to sleep in. Helping your kids create that type of space and routine for themselves as well is really valuable in helping them feel safe because they know what's expected. And anytime that we can have points of safety, of regulation, of kind of knowing where we can have some control, as well as areas that we can be wide open for, no control, that's, I think, where we get the maximum impact of unlocking to new things, whether that be developing your intuition or in new practices in life. So these kinds of things of like tapping into little routines and rituals and habits around clearing, your space, returning to your breath. Because again, as I began to kind of talk about, your breath is actually cleansing your palate. It helps calm your nervous system and regulate your system and let you know that you're safe. It gives nutrients to your bones as well as movement. Those are all things that are really healthy for your nervous system, as well as every time we inhale and exhale, it's like electrical charge to your energy body. And so that again is connecting you to the outside world and inward world. Breath is a really beautiful way of connecting in with your intuition and feeling safe in developing intuition as well and using it as a tool to feel like kind of playful in it. Okay, another great tool that I recommend for helping both yourself and your kids feel safe in connecting with your intuition is, again, we kind of touched in on this, but learning how to cultivate a relationship with yourself. And what I mean by that is not just getting to know yourself, because obviously as a child, like, that's going to take time to evolve. But as a child, I can tell you, as an intuitive, I am so much of who I am today. I was then as well. And so honoring that for your children, honoring that for your inner self, your inner child as an adult, knowing that the whole way through your life, your soul knows what it needs. It knows who it is and what it's here for. And even though we sometimes learn and grow and fail and explore, we do have the capacity to sort of lead the way on that. And so, as parents or guardians of your inner child, if you're an adult, honoring that is huge. That's a huge part of feeling safe to explore further. And that can be as simple as like, oh, well, what do you think about this? And let's talk more deeply. If your kids are starting to talk to you about experiences that they're having or memories that they have of different lives or just whatever it is that's being expressed to you, taking the time to give them the space to experience those feelings, emotions, and way of living through life and seeing what that evolves into as they have that time and space to explore. That was something that I fortunately was given from my mom, particularly. And she's very intuitive. That's where the generational side of intuition comes from. In my family, again, that wasn't something that we talked about at that time because it wasn't something that culturally was really safe to talk about or that was accepted. It was actually quite dangerous for a lot of families and a lot of lineages. And even if you feel safe with your child, or if you're an adult and you feel safe in other areas of your life, that could still be coming up for you. And so, even these tiny little moments of feeling like you're giving yourself the space to explore your thoughts and your feelings and your unique experience of the world, it's actually a pretty massive and valuable tool of nurturing, right? Other tips of cultivating that relationship is thinking about how it is that you interpret the world around you. And what I mean by this is what's your natural inclination? If you could shift the lens away from an intuitive conversation and look at the way you show up socially or where you feel most let up. Is it introversion? Is it extroversion? In what scenarios is it that you feel safest, most happiest? Like, how are you connecting with the world online, in person? Do you thrive in nature? Do you like a certain type of energy or music or aesthetic? Pinpointing these things about you, the way that you experience the world, interpret the world, express yourself in the world, and then going back to this with the lens of your intuition, because you're going to be showing up and expressing and connecting with your intuition most likely in a similar way. Do you like to kind of stand back and observe and take your time as you're getting to know someone or in a social environment? Well, then give yourself that experience as you're developing your intuition as well. Do you like to dive right in and have it be like full of experiences and aliveness? Well, great. Give yourself the opportunity to connect with others on an intuitive and spiritual journey and thrive in that environment. That might help you feel safer if you have more people surrounding you. Do you love nature? Can you feel a sense of purpose or oneness when you're in energy or nature or outside, or crack of dawn outside in the morning or late at night outside staring at the stars? And, for parents, what about that with your kids? Like, what time of the day did they really thrive? For me, growing up, I was a night owl. I really love the first morning sunlight as well. But given the choice, I loved exploring the nighttime. And that's still true. I think the reason I love the nighttime so much is I feel so deeply connected to the stars, and it's quiet and less static in the world around. So I can really feel the world breathing, if that makes sense. I can take in the senses of the messages of nature and the day. I don't feel overheated. It's usually cooler outside, and all of those things are natural for me that feel good to me. And so leaning into whatever my natural instinct and process is in other areas of my life, and then kind of applying that to an intuitive development lens is a beautiful way to honor your inner child and your child. Okay, aside from the sacred space meditation, which again, I'm going to link in the show notes along with this episode so that you can come back to that again and again and practice that sacred space if it feels good to you. But I want to kind of go into this conversation, especially for parents. But if you're not a parent and you're listening, apply this to your inner child as well, because it applies. You know, it's really critical to show up for ourselves the way that we need and would love to be shown up for. And so, for parents, just as you encourage or develop or cultivate your interest or your kids' interest in other gifts or in other ways, or the way that you have learned or help them learn or grow or approach aspects in life, the same is true for their intuitive development. It's just another sort of aspect of their personality, of who they are, of their expression in the world. And I think as we move into a less dense earth experience, that's only going to become more so the case, where our intuitive birthright is just like having the same way as, like, if someone has blue eyes and someone has brown eyes, like they both have eyes, but it's just a matter of how they're expressing that in the world, how they're showing up in the world is one versus the other. It's just a slightly different experience for them. But the same is true for our intuition. We all experience this a slight bit different, but at the baseline, we're all intuitive beings as a human birthright. It is the way that we are meant to exist in the world. And it's not, I'm intuitive, so I can't be creative, or I can't be in business, or I can't love 3D. Human things like sitting and watching movies or hanging out with my friends. Like, just because you're developing your intuition doesn't mean you have to cut yourself off from all the other things that you love, and vice versa. I learned that the hard way. I tried to separate my life of this spiritual richness with my business world and my relationship world. But the truth is, I never did a very good job of actually separating it. I just didn't talk about it externally, because the truth is that my spiritual knowing and gifts and insights were the foundations of everything else in life that I was doing and living and practicing and being. And that was what made great successes in so many areas of my life, when I really leaned into my intuition. And so teaching your kids and teaching yourself that that's safe and that that's okay is the biggest gift you can give them or you. It's no mistake that you are their parents. And I know I said that before, but I just really want to reiterate that. Like the parents that you have, the family that's around you, the mother, daughter, father, son, like whatever the dynamic is, it's by no accident that you're in this dynamic. And so you existing exactly as who you are, whether you're a parent or whether it's you now being and existing and refining your journey, don't discredit the experience that you had with your family because all of those dynamics are exactly as they were meant to be, even the ones that are devastating, hard, traumatic, challenging. Our souls came into contract of wanting these different things. We needed that. And I can look back in my own personal life and see that through the lens of even the things that, I'm not a person with many regrets or a wishful that things could have been different. There are a few circumstances that I've thought of that if anything I wish that they could have been different, but then when I really look more closely at them, I realize I wouldn't be who I am without those experiences. When we live in a state of comfortability, it doesn't pressure us into expanding and stepping fully into all that it is that we're capable of. And that's something that even in the culture of what we're feeling right now, with so many things happening in our world so fast, devastating things as well as beautiful things all at the same time, it can feel unbelievably overwhelming. And I know from day to day and week to week, I can personally feel an experience of just absolute shutdown and overwhelm. And I have to take time out and take breaks to just reset myself and remind my soul everything is good and really redirect my focus and my emotions to that truth. And so helping yourself know that, helping your children know that, and find ways to redirect the vision of their emotions, of their sight, of their life, to knowing that things really are safe for them and working in their favor. It's by no accident that you are their protector, their parent, their supporter, that you're here listening to this podcast, showing up for them, you showing up for your inner self, your inner child as well, giving yourself permission to believe that that's true. And then discerning for yourself in your own intuition. Is that true for you? What's the lens? What's the perspective that you want to look at the world through? That's my experience, is that the universe, even in the darkest aspects, is working in evolution of our favor. And the more energy I can put towards that and hold vision of, the more that regulates my nervous system and the more I see that outcome occurring. So that's another amazing tool that you can share with your kids and your family, and also just giving yourself permission to be exactly as you feel like you should be, because that is a huge part. Again, going back to developing our intuition is really about honoring ourselves, trusting ourselves, and showing up for ourselves as what it is that we wish we had as a kid, and then projecting that outward and helping support your children in that way as well, to validate and care for both your inner child as well as your physical child. So these are some tools that I personally use, I've grown up with and used, and that I would say in my experiences of kind of having to learn the hard way in a lot of cases. And what I mean by that is there were so many unanswered questions. And also, yes, I did have guides and my angels and my teachers and other dimensionals teaching me, but that was also a part of my journey, was kind of needing to learn and come into my own grit by experiencing some of the more challenging things, both in the physical and in the unseen worlds, getting to have that support from family. And even though I would say I had to learn in difficult circumstances that validation and empowerment for myself, I was also in a supported environment, meaning I was allowed to have, set the table for my imaginary friends, and the things that I felt deeply were never shut down by my mom when I felt overwhelmed by the world and to feeling or when I had experiences around other kids where I just felt like so different and on the fringe of not really understanding how to live in life, in earth, right? And so those things weren't overlooked. And I would say that's one of the most valuable tools that you can give your own children and teaching them their own validation, teaching them to understand what it is that they're sensing, feeling, experiencing, and how to navigate that and how to learn, critical thinking of what's like my toolkit steps of like, is this my energy? Are these my emotions? Am I feeling things around me that aren't mine? Am I needing to get a certain message or whatever it is for your child? Like you're going to have that intuition for yourself of what that looks like and lean into that, trust that, and then help encourage that within themselves. Because there's really not a wrong way. Like even by showing up for your inner child or for your child in any way or capacity, it's going to be massive for them in the long run. It's going to be supportive in exactly the right ways that they're needing. But these are ways that you can show up and teach them, especially protected space is huge because the more that you can feel validated to honor and trust when something doesn't feel right to you and to know what to do about it and how to clear it out of your field, how to feel that you have safety measures the same way that physically we understand how to run away from danger, how to trust not to talk to strangers, or how we trust asking for help from trusted adults and learning the difference between trusted adults and adults that may be of certain power positions, but then also may not be safe. And so, just as we teach our children that, and just as we have to relearn that as adults, if you can share that with your inner child and your child, this is huge. So, I hope that these tools have been really helpful and supportive for you. This is a beginning of a conversation. I don't want to overwhelm you with any information. Leave feedback, reach out in the DMs or leave comments if you're on YouTube listening or otherwise. Reach out and connect and let me know what it is that you're wanting deeper information on or how this is going for you and your kids. What does that look like in developing your intuition? Again, this conversation isn't specifically about tools to develop your intuition, but these are the tools that help get you set up for developing your intuition, for feeling safe in that, and then going into that sacred space and beginning to question like the experiences of, oh, what is the color of this emotion that I'm feeling? Does it have a color? What's the texture of it? Do I feel like maybe a loved one that's passed on is communicating to me? What's the signs that are really unique and specific for that person? Taking the time to cultivate this sensory experience for yourself. That's the way that you develop your intuition. And we'll have another episode on specifically developing your intuition. These are great ways that you can support yourself on your intuitive development journey, feeling safe and supported and practiced. So, all right, I can't wait to hear everything going on for you guys. I can't wait to hear how it's going with your kids, how their nervous system is regulated, how you feel more empowered with yourself or with them along this journey of the unseen and really recognize for yourself it's the same experience of everything else that you're learning and excited about learning and wanting to dive into. However, it is that is your nature of diving in, or the way that you help your kids learn things is exactly the way that you should approach your intuitive connection journey, because that's what's going to feel really natural to your soul and make the most sense for you rather than trying to do it the way this person says or that person says. Really lean into what's best for you. All right. Thank you so much for being here. I can't wait to connect and sending you all my love.